like that, that would be a piece of digital property that would be worth a lot. And that's kind of the only kind of verifiable ownership that we had was through like domain registrars. Imagine if you could take that, model and apply it to anything else that's digital, and what business models and opportunities and kind of economic opportunities can we create for people with those things become possible. So when I think of NFTs, I think of that as like the first kind of true, avenue for digital ownership on anything, on the internet, and kind of having that framework basically.
Couldn't agree more with what Will said. What I'll also add on of like why you should still care about that is that if you think back like 20 years, like a fraction of your time was spent on digital, right? Now if you look at your screen time on your iPhone, maybe it's like way too many hours a day, right? And people are spending so much more of their time in digital, and increasingly from consumer behavior studies for Gen Z, they're now saying that actually their digital presence is more important to them than even how they appear in real life. So I think it's a coupling of both the potential for digital ownership and the critical importance of sort of consumer behavior shifting to be heavily in the digital world.
Stealing both of their answers here. I mean, I think, Avery touched on a really great point in the sense that there's going to be a moment in time, similar to how we talk about singularity with AI, there's going to be a moment in time where your digital presence is, your presence in the world, and the way that you interact with people is, heavily leaning that way. I think if people in this room can all agree that so many things in our lives over the last 10, 15 years have been converting into digital things, whether that be a ticket or whatever it is that gets you into an event or an experience, if you can kind of wrap your head around that, then, I think you can wrap your head around the fact that ownership needs to be digital as well. Personally, I came from a space in content production before this. I owned and operated an agency of my own. And there was plenty of artists out there that were doing incredible things on their computers and on the internet, but that wasn't a space for them to really kind of like own it. Once they posted it on their Instagram, it was out there. I mean, you see it, and Instagram is a great example. People were, reusing people's work with no ownership of it. And I think it's something that's really important for an entire generation of people that might not be painting with, traditional tools or drawing with a pencil, but using their computers. We need to provide ownership for them, and that was the foundation of it. Now I think that opened a lot of people's eyes as to what other things can be owned digitally and what can collecting things digitally really mean.
Cool, thank you. So if we were playing a drinking game and you had to take a shot for a word that was said, I feel like that word in this space would be community. I'd love to get sort of your definition of what community means to you.
What it means?
Like, what does it mean to you? It's sort of one of these amorphous words.
Yeah, I mean, community in this space is truly kind of the foundation of all of this. I think it's what you need to be a successful project in the NFT space. The whole industry is based around a bunch of, young, old, whatever, people that are super interested in kind of like bucking the system, right? And you need to be able to give them kind of like some sense of unity and community in that aspect. And part of it too is just like building into that, listening to that community. We're all here at, the foundation of this industry, right? We are the architects of this industry, and if we're just taking what we think it should be and not listening to what people want it to be, then we're not doing our jobs properly. So I think that kind of like ownership of listening to our community is really important.
Yeah, definitely. If you were having a drinking game, that everyone would be having constant shots about community and utility and access, like 3 buzzwords, maybe throw in metaverse. But to me, I think community in the general sense, right, means a group of individuals who have a collective interest in something. And what's interesting about NFT communities is oftentimes the collective interest sometimes can be about something like sports, right? Like autograph, like sports collectors like to go collect from some of their favorite athletes. Same with Top Shot, same with some of the music projects or art projects. But what's a new sort of dimension to this within the NFT space is also a financial interest that's shared of the overall project success. So if you're a holder of one of these projects, you're not just part of a community that says, I think Will's awesome club. It's like you actually have a group financial interest in that appreciation.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo those sentiments exactly. Just to add on, like another kind of buzzword is decentralized, right? Everything's decentralized. There's no one entity that controls everything. So in this case, we have companies like Autograph and On-Chain Studios and all these different things that we're building. But at the end of the day, in Web3, the community really is the company, right? They're the ones kind of marketing on your behalf. They're the ones evangelizing on your behalf. Goes back to what Avery's saying. They are actually financially incentivized and rewarded to be great evangelists of the company. So if you don't have a healthy community, at the foundational level, you're not set up for success, which is why it's so important in Web3. You have to start with community and build from the ground up.
Cool, thank you. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about friction, on-ramps, and accessibility, given, I think what you saw here, a room of tech-forward people, maybe 40%, 50% have actually sort of taken that leap, opened up a MetaMask, and owned one. Where do you guys think we are? Like, what are the issues of getting mainstream investors, buyers, adopters into NFTs?
I mean, I think you touched on it, right? Setting up a MetaMask wallet isn't, to some people not the easiest thing in the world if it's not your life. I think in terms of where we're at, we are at the very beginning. I think we're at the very beginning of everything, quite honestly. Like, it's hard for us to say that we're past step one anywhere, but I think in terms of like adoption, we are very early. NFT was, I think, the word of the year this year, but for the dictionary. But I think a lot of people are still, ownership is a small group of people. In terms of like, what are we doing to kind of like help kind of onboard? At Autograph, it was a big conversation for us at the very beginning of how are we going to get sports collectors involved in this community really fast. And a strategic decision for us was to launch with DraftKings, with a partnership with DraftKings. What was super helpful for us that kind of, it was certainly a stepping stone for us as we want to continue to build towards decentralized everything. But it was a great access point for us because it allowed us to, on day one, access 15 million users that were set up with wallets, fiat paying wallets, right? And that was a really easy way for us to break that barrier of entry. You can buy our NFTs with a credit card, right? You can purchase those things with a credit card. That was really easy. And what we've seen since then is a lot of our users now have figured out and have learned how fun it is to collect NFTs. And now that, that struggle and that hurdle, like, okay, I will go through the 10 minutes it will take me to learn how to set up a MetaMask wallet, right? They'll take that leap, and it's been really, really enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, I mean, as far as where we are in the space, again, if this was a baseball game, this is top of the first inning. I really believe that. We're in we're in the AOL days. Like, we're at the, hey mom, hang up the phone, I'm trying to get online phase of NFTs. Like, it's that early. And like, just to kind of put things into perspective, I think there's the recent statistics, there's only a few 100,000 active wallets right now on OpenSea. If you think of like the gaming industry, for example, which is a space I know all of us are really bullish on, there's close to 3 billion gamers in the world, right? To like think about some of the potential of like what this market's going and the opportunities that exist. There's so many barriers. Like the average person that's kind of getting into this for the first time, setting up a MetaMask wallet, it's extremely complicated. Writing down your seed phrases and learning about like what happens if you lose your seed phrases. And
it's yours.
Yeah, right. So it's like honestly, I don't even want to get started with that, right? Even like for someone like us that's deeply in the space, we still get anxious when we think about those things, right? I know some of the things that like Avery and other folks are working on is, supporting things across different blockchains. Right now we think like Ethereum and, that's kind of the main one right now, but we're going much more into this kind of cross-chain composability kind of future where that's going to be kind of less important and more important about the benefits to the users. So yeah, this is super early and the barriers are real. Avery, I know you've talked to a lot of potential clients that deal with these barriers, all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more with accepting credit cards is a huge kind of hurdle clearer, right? And a lot of the projects you've seen that are a little bit more geared towards mainstream folks do accept credit cards. A lot of brand drops do, a lot of sort of sports platforms do. And I think that's one way to get around it. Will also touched on another barrier, which is important, which is the fact that as a user, you have to have multiple different wallets for multiple different chains, which can get a little bit confusing. And cybersecurity for crypto is not amazing. To give like a fun fact, like a very well-connected guy, like bought a VFriend, put it in a new wallet, wrote his seed phrase down in a piece of paper and washed his jeans. So there goes, a Tesla, basically. And that's there's no way, because it's decentralized, there's no calling Chase Bank and asking for them to reinstate it, right? So it's a bit of a different thing. So the barriers are very real, but I think beyond the barriers, there's just tremendous potential for the space to develop, and we're seeing some really interesting use cases like Autograph, like Cryptoys, like VFriends, like we did a drop with Budweiser this week, and small numbers like 2,000 cans, but they sold out in a minute, right? It's kind of interesting to see how the current small NFT community is actually very welcoming of these more traditional intellectual property owners entering the space if they do it the right way.
I want to push you guys a little harder on that, right? So we talked about some of the barriers. There's different types of wallets and chains. I think just like the lingo can be intimidating. There's gas fees, there's security and fraud. What changes and who participates in that change to get someone a little bit less comfortable, more comfortable?
I'll maybe chime in here. So I think that I'll use Amazon as an example, right? Like one-click shipping just like makes your life so easy. I think they had the patent for that until like just very, very recently. I think what will happen is there will be a platform that just makes it so simple and easy. It doesn't exist that I've seen today, but I think it'll be coming. There's some interesting platforms being developed. We know that Twitter is actively developing things here, that Meta is, that Coinbase is, and I think the platform that wins will be one that's open and probably a little bit more general, and two that's really simple to bring in a lot of new users. I think that's kind of what we need.
Yeah, I'm bullish on like marketplaces that kind of help solve this problem. Like, you know, I think we're all using OpenSea right now as the default. They've announced support for multiple chains. They've announced support for Flow and other ones. Maybe they're ones to help solve that problem, because right now it's kind of very heavy on Ethereum and some layer 2 solutions. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. We're a Dapper Labs portfolio company. They're doing a lot of tremendous work working with like the NBA and the NFL and other mainstream brands to make it simple, and their blockchain is called Flow. So a lot of just like simple credit card processing are going through there and their marketplaces, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I think marketplaces are going to be like the first wave that help us solve that, right?
I think you're so right that cross-chain is really critical, right? Because it takes away those wallet issues. It makes it easy for everyone to play nicely together. But on the contrasting side, if you look at social media, you just have many walled gardens, right? And we've all sort of accepted that. So in our ideal world, I think it would be cross-chain, but it'll, remains to be seen.
Yeah, we got to figure out what the interface is, right?
I think education, from our perspective too, is really important as well. I like look back at some of the first time ever buying Ethereum, and Coinbase always had like a really simple, user-friendly way to explain to me like what I was doing, how I was setting this up, walking through these things. I think there's going to be platforms that come along that are taking the Apple approach, right? They're trying to be as user-friendly as possible, and the technology is incredible, but there's a way to kind of like help people feel a little bit less intimidated in the process, and I think that's really important. It's a step that we tried to take again with the credit card, fiat paying users onboarding, but it is truly important for us to continue to decentralize, so that requires a lot of education and letting people know what that means.
And maybe I'll have one more thing that I think will actually be a huge